Hi, I'm Scott Smith, the Budget Director at the Douglas County School District. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the budget for the 2014-2015 school year. At the board meeting on June 17th, the board officially adopted the budget for the year that begins on July 1st. While the board adopted the budget in June, it's really a 6-month process to develop our budget for the next school year. Every year in November, the governor releases his request for the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. We were hopeful that due to increasing revenues at the statewide level, that there would be a significant increase for K-12 education. During the recession, K-12 education was cut along with many other programs, and given that revenues had recovered to pre-recession levels, we were hopeful that the governor would propose a restoration of some of those cuts. Unfortunately, the governor's budget did not include a restoration of those cuts and only included $11 million of additional revenue for the Douglas County School District. In January, we briefed the Board of Education on what that would mean for our neighborhood schools. Seeing that there was no reduction in the cuts that schools have been taking, Dr. Fagan joined with the vast majority of Colorado superintendents to submit a letter to the legislature asking for a meaningful reduction of the cuts to K-12 education. They asked that out of the $1 billion of statewide cuts that are currently in place, that $275 million be restored in this fiscal year. This would have meant that the Douglas County School District would have seen an increase of about $24 million of revenue. In April, the School Finance Act was finally presented in the legislature and included a restoration of cuts of $110 million statewide, not the $275 million that the superintendents had originally requested. This translates to about $18.5 million for Douglas County School District. As you can see here, at the April board meeting, staff proposed using this increased funding to put more money back into our schools. Staff proposed an increase to the school's budgets in the form of $205 in discretionary per-pupil funding in their site-based budgets. Further, staff proposed an average 3% pay increase to all evaluated employees. And lastly, the staff proposed to the board that the district absorb benefit cost increases related to medical premiums and para on behalf of all its employees. The increase in funding that has allowed staff to propose these increases to the site-based budgets as well as compensation increases for employees are due to an increase in our per-pupil revenue, or PPR, from the state of Colorado. In the 2014-2015 school year, we're expecting to see an increase in per-pupil revenue of about $356 to $6,752. While this increase translates to about $18.5 million for our neighborhood schools, Douglas County School District is still the lowest funded district along the Front Range. As you can see in this graph, Douglas County School District has been the lowest funded district along the Front Range in the 2013-2014 school year and the 2014-2015 school year. In fact, Douglas County School District lost some funding as compared to the statewide average. Our increase was $356 per pupil, while the statewide average increase was $368 per pupil. If DCSD were funded at the statewide average, this would mean approximately $14 million of additional funding that could go to our neighborhood schools. While we don't control the level of funding that we receive from the state, we are committed to pushing every dollar possible out to our schools, either in their site-based budgets or to their employees in the form of compensation increases. As I just mentioned, the increase to Douglas County School District is about $356 per pupil, or about $18.5 million for our neighborhood schools. I'm excited to announce that for the second year in a row, every single new dollar of increased revenue is going out to our schools. It's going out either in their site-based budgets or into compensation increases for our employees in our school locations. As you can see here, on a per-pupil basis, we added $205 per pupil to the site-based budgets. During the 2013-2014 school years, the schools received $105 per pupil that was funded on a one-time basis out of the district's reserves. A good analogy to explain this is to think of this being funded out of cash. Since cash can only be spent once and is not from ongoing revenue, it can only be provided on a one-year basis. Given the strong revenue picture from the state, we have committed to providing this $105 per pupil on an ongoing basis out of our new revenue in the coming fiscal year. In addition to the $105 per pupil that's now provided on an ongoing basis, an additional $50 per pupil was provided to schools at the beginning of the budget process in February. Given the positive revenue forecast from the state, we were comfortable adding $50 of discretionary money at the schools at that time. Once the final school finance bill passed at the beginning of May, and we knew exactly how much funding we would be receiving for our neighborhood schools, we added an additional discretionary allocation of $50 per pupil to the site-based budgets. That is worth approximately $2.6 million out to our schools. Additionally, on a per-pupil basis, we provided compensation increases of $152 per pupil to our school-based employees. That means that in this new year, every single dollar out of our $356 increase has been allocated out to our schools. As we go into the new school year, we're excited about the opportunities that the additional funding levels can be able to provide. While the additional revenue is a welcome change from the recession-era levels of decreased funding, the school district is still not funded at the same level that it was in the 2009-2010 school year. We're hopeful that as the Colorado economy continues to recover, that the legislature will continue to push more money into K-12 education. We can then take that money and put it out into our schools and to our employees' compensation packages. If you have any additional questions about the district's budget, please reference the district's budget website. Thank you.